First, I want to say that Persona 5 is amazing. I absolutely love it, and I highly encourage you to play it yourself, or at least watch the anime adaptation of it, as this video will be going into spoilers. Now, like I said, I love Persona 5 so much. I never got to play Persona 4, but I watched the anime and fell in love with the idea of the games, and as soon as I heard there was a new Persona game coming out, I made sure I was able to get my hands on it. And the game definitely did not disappoint. The gameplay is fun and engaging, there's a great level of difficulty without relying on hours of grinding, but hands down my favorite aspect was the relationships I made with the various characters scattered across the game. It's not just the Phantom Thieves, I love developing the relationships with all of the characters, from the hot doctor, to the sketchy guy selling me prop guns, to even the twin wardens harassing me in my dreams. Now, not to discredit Persona 5, but it definitely had some big shoes to fill. Even just by watching the anime, the characters from Persona 4 were groundbreakingly amazing. The development with you throughout the story has left a huge impact on the world of the Shin Megami games, arguably being the biggest reason the games are as popular as they are now. So I went in cautiously when I slowly grew my team of Phantom Thieves. I didn't want to set my expectations too high by comparing these characters with our beloved classics. And I'm happy to say I was not disappointed. These characters are charming and fun and unique all in their own right. However, there is one Phantom Thief who ended up as a bit of a disappointment. An Takamaki. An is the fourth member to join our hero team, and I kicked her off the team as soon as I could. An just doesn't sit right with me, and the more of her story I uncovered, the more I found myself put off by her character. So what's her problem? Well, I'll just get right to the point. Her over-sexualization. Seeing one of my main characters being so painfully forced into positions meant to be ogled just gives me the creeps. I don't like being told to stare at my friends' tits, and I don't like how An seems to be constantly put into this position, especially since it goes against literally everything her character is fighting for. So, that castle where An joins our team. This is where we get the foundation for An's character growth. See, unlike Persona 4, where our teammates had to face their own shadows, in Persona 5, we have to face the shadows of evil people manipulating our friends in various ways. But, like I said, this video is about An, and An's struggle is oddly undermined throughout the events of the game. An's story is the struggle of being seen as a sexual object. Inside of Kamoshida's castle, there's a cognitive version of An following him around. Kamoshida is the kids' PE teacher, and he's using his old Olympic achievements to manipulate the school. And one of the ways he's doing that is threatening An with her friend's safety by trying to force her to have sexual relations with him. The way we see his cognitive version of An in his castle just hammers home how gross his perception of An truly is. She's scantily clad, is always following him around, and it doesn't take long for the Phantom Thieves to vow to put an end to this guy's actions. An, along with her friends, are able to stop him. He gets arrested, and An gets to move forward after this ordeal. She no longer will be seen as a sex object, some fantasy for men to ogle. She's going to be proud of who she is, and not ever allow others to try to take advantage of her just because of her body ever again. And then the game ruins this. An's whole character is centered around this concept of fighting past being a sexual object, and yet, at the same time, apparently someone didn't get the memo. Look at that! She sure is hot in that bikini. Wowza, check out those tits. Oh baby, wanna see some leg? The cutscenes throughout the game constantly put An in overly sexy positions and forces the camera up and down her body for us to drool over. And it's gross. Not only is it gross to treat any woman like this in general, but it's even grosser knowing what her character is actively going through in the game. We really get to see two versions of An. There's the An in the story, the girl trying to be seen as a strong woman, not a sexual fantasy. And then there's the An that the camera forces into sexy positions so we can stare at her body. And it's a gross dichotomy being presented to us here. An's whole story gets so muddied throughout the game, and I don't understand how her character could have been so mismanaged. The message of her character arc is actively getting confused due to the game's own way of sexualizing An for us. The game is forcing us to ogle her the same way she's trying to get away from. There's aspects of An's development that actually does make sense. Case in point, her modeling career. For her confidant storyline, An reveals she wants to do modeling, and she struggles with being regarded as a real potential for modeling. And I actually love this. This actually highlights an important element of An's story, taking her sexuality and giving it back to herself. Rather than letting creeps stare at her and turn her into some sexual fantasy, she's actively taking her body and showing it off on her own volition. A lot of people will try to shame pretty girls after being creeped on by perverts like Kamoshida. "Oh, you shouldn't have been wearing that outfit. If you didn't want people to look at you, then you shouldn't have been showing off your body like that." But that is incredibly disgusting. Those kinds of mentalities are victim shaming. They blame An for being pretty, rather than blame Kamoshida for trying to take advantage of her. It's his fault he's a perverted shitstain. It's not An's fault for having a curvy body. It can actually be really hard for women with sexy bodies to feel comfortable enough to embrace their sexuality, especially after being objectified like how An has. Rather than give into this concept of being ashamed of her body, even though it's apparent she's a beautiful woman, she's harnessing the courage to commit to her modeling career and embracing her beauty for herself. Being sexy isn't the issue I have with An. Look at her Phantom Thief costume overall. The idea of their outfits as Phantom Thieves is one of my favorite elements of the game. The thieves' disguises are actually a reflection on how the world sees them, mixed with their own concepts of what rebellion is. Ryuji gets stereotyped as some punk thug, so his skull look reflects that concept. Makoto is called a militant hardass, and her queen attire plays into this notion. It's more apparent with some characters over others, but An's design is probably the most apparent example of this concept. An is considered a sex icon, so her leather, BDSM revealing catsuit plays into these concepts. Even her weapon, a whip, hints to this sexualized mentality. The idea of these costumes is really fun. It's not to try to perpetuate these stereotypes onto our heroes, rather, they're wearing these as symbols for how society judges others for shallow reasons. An might be sexy, and others might think of her as only a sexual fantasy. And An has to acknowledge the fact that this is a perception others have for her. Panthers' sexy catsuit is a spit in the face of those who think this is all there is to An. Unfortunately, it feels like someone in charge of the game didn't understand this aspect of her design. Her confidant arcana seems to have confused concepts when it comes to representing An's character arc. An's persona is the Lover's card, and by all means, I don't know why. The Lover's card represents love, harmony, relationships, and choices. What about An's story implies any of these concepts? Sure, I can see where you could make an argument for some of them, but it's a stretch at best, at least in my opinion. An's life isn't exactly harmonious now that she's aiming for a fanciful life as a famous model, and with her constantly moving across the world to follow her parents' fashion careers, harmonious is far from how I would describe An's life. An does grow a strong relationship with Joker, and her relationship with Shiro compels her to move forward, but love? Choices? It feels obtuse at best, and only distantly feels related to An's development. If anything, the reversed Lover's card makes a little more sense with the concept of self-love. An learns to be proud of herself and feel comfortable in her own body. By all means, it just feels like the game is telling me to be attracted to An. Look, she's so hot. Just look at her. Her card is Lovers, so just love her. That's how you're supposed to feel. It feels like it's boiling her down to the love interest trope, and it sucks because An shows us in-game that she has a lot more than that, but the game itself seems to be fighting her back down. By all means, I think strength would have been a better fit for An. Courage, influence, compassion, those qualities describe An much more, embracing her healing process. And the reverse strength card fits her debacle fighting Kamoshida a lot better too. Self-doubt, raw emotions. Those ideas dragged An down and played into Kamoshida's twisted cognitive version of her. You know what? Who does have the Strength Arcana in Persona 5? Oh. Well, I was gonna suggest just swapping the cards, but like, that doesn't sit well with me. Like, to be fair, the Lover's card is often associated with Gemini and is also called the Twins card in certain circles, but there's still just a lot to try to unpack with this context, and I'm just gonna end this idea here. Even An's persona persona feels confused when it comes to displaying her character. Carmen represents the idea of a woman scorned, alluding to Ann's objectification by Kamoshida, and Carmen's design very much reflects Ann's growth as a proud woman. She's dragging these men's bodies around, whose faces are a twisted allusion to a love-struck suitor. Carmen is in control of this situation. She's not beholden to these random men, she's the one in charge, stepping on their backs or yanking them around by their necks. She's flaunting her body proudly and not letting ogling men get her down. And Carmen's final form, Celestine, plays into those same concepts, only it better alludes to her as a modern woman and has many elements of her design that also fit into Ann's modeling career, specifically the stylish outfit. But the persona you unlock by getting on to a level 9 confidant is Hecate, who is a BDSM sexy witch lady? She's dragging dogs around with her now, which feels so weird since Ann is specifically going with a cat theme, a witch, these chains, those tits. Who thought this was a good representation for Ann? I really feel like we could have gone with something that better fits Ann's growth, getting to that 9th level confidant status. By this point, we all know how hard Ann is fighting to grow with her career and has taken ownership of her sexuality. Hecate does nothing to portray these concepts. I think the biggest salt in the wound for me here is Ann is the only character who gets this treatment. We don't shove the camera down Makoto's shirt in this scene. We don't flash Haru's upper thighs in this scene. Ann is literally the only one who gets forced into being an over-sexualized element in these cutscenes. It undermines her story and makes me feel bad for her. I hate having the camera objectifying her when I'm well aware how much Ann hates it. Is it on purpose? Is the game trying to test me? Oh, you like Ann? Well, is it just because of her body? Is it just for her design? If you really liked her, seeing her tits wouldn't matter, right? I wonder if maybe it's just a cultural issue. After all, perverted Master Roshi was played up for laughs, so maybe Ann's sexualization is just a matter of being lost in translation. But maybe it's time to address the question my video is proposing. Is Ann problematic? Well, it's hard to say. While Ann is explicitly presented to be fetishized because of her body in some scenes, it really would be doing Ann a disservice if I pretended this was the only aspect of her character, because it really isn't. We might ogle Ann's thighs and tits, but that doesn't change the fact her character is well developed. After all, I've spelled it out here in this video. She is strong. She has overcome the stigma the world pushed onto her and embraced her sexuality for herself. And she's a fun character beyond that main aspect of her development. She's thoughtful, caring, funny, and she proves to us time and time again throughout the game that there's a lot more to Ann than just her body. I shouldn't let a few poorly directed cutscenes take that personality away from Ann. So no, I wouldn't say she's problematic, but I would say she's mismanaged. While I may be happy with Ann's development as a character beyond what the camera tells us, it doesn't change the fact that this sexualization of female characters needs to be addressed, especially when it goes against the entire point of said characters' struggles. It can be hard to feel comfortable with how the game displays Ann for me, to be able to stare at her body. Even her casual stance in combat has her leaning forward, shoving her ass up in my face. It can make the game feel alienating. It makes it feel like I'm not supposed to be playing it, because I'm not enjoying watching how Ann gets treated. And while this is a detriment to the game itself, it isn't a character flaw on Ann's behalf. This isn't an issue I can, nor should, ignore. It devalues Ann's entire character arc. However, Ann's character arc itself is a powerful one, and one I think we should really be focusing on. I can be optimistic about these scenes and say it might be portraying the idea that Ann is growing more comfortable with showing off her body, tying into her modeling career goals, but I think the biggest issue is that it isn't presented as something Ann is necessarily striving to do. It's implied the boy characters are the ones doing the staring, even if Ann isn't happy with that idea. I say we should use this as an important learning moment. What do we do as a consumer of media when the characters are telling us one thing, but the camera is telling us something different? Your camera is essentially a character too, and if your characters are telling me one thing, try not to have that idea undermined through the camera. Learn when sex appeal crosses a line, and maybe don't think of every female character as a sex icon. Ann might be hot in that bikini, and she's sexy in that kimono, but I think Ann is most beautiful when she's comfortable and wearing a smile. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you had a lot of fun with it. Shout out to my $10 patrons. You're all amazing. Nago, James Dodds, Cool Duck, Andrew, Ramiel, Valhalla Knight, Chamomile, G Extreme, Classy Critic, Surge, Boulder Off Pros, Noah Perkins, Sunny Shy, Great Bar, Caleb Grimm, Pentamenta, Genital War Thunder, Carmen, Order, Vortex, Jake, Amber, and Melef. So yeah, I hope you liked this video. It's another thing I've been thinking about for a while. I don't know if anyone else is gonna care at all. But tell me, what do you think? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you think everything I said was wrong and stupid? Let me know. Also, do you like Persona 5? What do you think about the idea of making on the strength persona? And I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.